Greetings! This is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome once more. We're diving back into the lore and world of Magic the Gathering. Yes, that's what today's episode is all about, and I'm going to be taking you to a plane I've visited before. I've been here before! Well, yes. Back in the day, in my older videos, I have done two different videos here. One about the, of course, actual set related to this one of the sets at very least, Lorwyn, and I did a video, actually a little bit about the plane. But today we're revisiting that plane and going a little bit more into depths about a lot of the lore and setup in this plane, some of the history and things like that of Lorwyn, mainly because another Lorwyn set's going to be coming out very soon. And yes, there will be a new level of lore added in at that point in time, but I thought, strike while the iron's hot while we're about to get this, so you out there who aren't maybe familiar with Lorwyn can get a backstop of what's going on in it for the new set. And maybe I'll do a companion piece, an update, if you will, for Lorwyn once the new set comes out. We'll see. I haven't done an update video yet. I've always talked about it. But why don't we, of course, dive into the plane of Lorwyn / Shadowmoor? And that's the important part about it, is Lorwyn is both, well, two different planes in a way. Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. And I can explain this in a interesting way. So it's a plane with two aspects. Lorwyn represents day, Shadowmoor night. And for a long period of time, it switched to a cycle where every 300 years it would switch between one and the other. And this was an unnatural event triggered by something called the Great Aurora. We'll talk about that. That is going to be a big topic we're going to dive into today. But keep in mind that this Great Aurora disrupted a lot about the plane itself and caused it to have this cycle. Things happened, the cycle kind of ended, and where we are now, which I will talk about, is the two planes fused and the cycle undone. There's now day and night has resumed. That's why revisiting Lorwyn, where Lorwyn is the dominant of the two planes, but the still cycle remains, and the influence of Shadowmoor is there, is an interesting thing. So let's talk about these two and one a little bit. As you can see some examples of their landscapes there. So what is this? This is, of course, the Great Aurora. The thing which triggered the changing. But we do have to talk about these two aspects. Now, yes, the Lorwyn block is really the only time we have met this. The Lorwyn block was 4 sets. If you want to look into those 4 sets from the past, of course, the first one was Lorwyn, followed by Morningtide, and then you had Shadowmoor, and Eventide. Those 4 created the story. The plane itself is a small, temperate area believed to be a flat world. And the known portion of plane, known as the Blessed Lands, is heavily forested and ringed by mountains, outside of which lies an area known as the Primal Beyond. Now, the Primal Beyond, other than knowing about its existence, there is one card in Morningtide which shows a picture of it. I'm not going to switch to it here, but just keep in mind, that's all we have. Let me switch to an image here for you guys. I try and get too many images. There you go. There's the Primal Beyond. Anyway. I side tangent. So it's a world without lakes, without oceans. In fact, all the water that it has comes from rivers and streams connected by a subterranean area known as the Dark Meanders. It exists in a perpetual midsummer and eternal daytime. That's Lorwyn. The citizens still operate on a daily cycle. They observe dawn, noon, dusk, and no night. And the day beginning when the sun gazes in the eastern horizons and end when it gazes in the westerns. The currency of Lorwyn consists of threads of precious metals in denominations of copper, silver, gold, grouped in sizes of threads, ropes, and coils. And of course, currently, it did get invaded by New Phyrexia. We'll talk about that. And is a fused together. So, with the fusing, we do have to talk about the Great Aurora. what the hell is it, who the hell did it, and why did it end? And that is a complexity that we have to look to. Not that big. This nice lady here, because she's at the heart of the Great Aurora and everything that happened. She is Onona, Queen of the Fae. So the Great Aurora basically changed Lorwyn to its twisted dark counterpart, Shadowmoor, and vice versa. It was caused by Onona, through her lengthening the times of normal days and nights of Lowryn to last centuries at a time. Now, the thing about the Great Aurora is we go to the Lowryn block, and it's out of kilter. Something went wrong. Effectively, the Great Aurora in Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, where the two switch occurs because of the Great Mending, a major event that happened in respect to going on Dominaria with Time Circle, the Time Spiral block. So yes, that entire thing that changed Planeswalker Sparks. It's a big event. It's in the history. It also changed an unnatural switch. Onona was concerned about this because the fact is, of all the beings in Shadowmoor and Lorwyn, her and her kin were protected from the switching. So she was unsure if she would be protected because the Great Aurora was happening early. So as precaution, she actually killed an elf woman named Maralen, who becomes very important here to our story, because then she duplicated Maralen, created a version of her, and housed her a copy of her memories in this being. So this copy of Maralen was both Maralen and Onona in a way. She basically did this, created this being that could be out in the plane, because then she hoped that if something happened, it would have a copy of her memories stored in it and could bring it to her. If they were hidden in there in such a way, it could bring her back her memories. If she lost them, she was afraid this Aurora, unnatural, would affect her like the rest of the plane. So, yeah. Now, the main storyline of the entire block, we do have to talk about it because it is important here, is this version of Maralen basically came back to her people without knowing she was unusual. But basically, she effectively discovered what she was to a degree. She discovered she was an avatar of Onona, but something in the creation of her and the early Great Aurora had caused something interesting. Elena gained self-awareness, and she did not follow Ona's orders or have a desire to become part of her again. So she basically did some things and ensured that she would retain her memories and appearance post the Great Aurora. So she was created before the Great Aurora, the early one, and she discovered what she was before the Great Aurora and managed to basically manipulate some fae, some fairies, in order to help her retain her ability. So when Shadowmoor came, she basically went to a number of other beings, combined some elemental abilities, faced down Onona, and defeated her. Onona was defeated at the hands of Maralen and the companions she gathered together in Shadowmoor. And doing this, she became the new Queen of the Fae and restored the day-night cycle. And kind of got rid of... She returned Lorwyn, Shadowmoor to its more natural site. But she did do one thing. She gave some specialized kind of poison. A poison that basically had been there at the moment, the original of her dot, Moonglove. And because of that, it was linked to her intrinsically. Because it was part of her original death. So she gave it to one of her companions, Riss, an elf, to basically, if something goes wrong with what's going on in the cycle, if there's a sign that things will return to the way, basically the influence of what was Onona in her spirit will overcome her to basically poison her and get rid of her. So that's kind of where we leave off in the storyline in the blocks of Lorwyn, canonically as of right now. Now, I will talk about the future and the feuds, but we want to kind of move into who was there during this time period, because it gives us a good idea of excuse me, who will be there in the new set and around the time of the invasion. See, there's a complex mess in the Lorwyn lore. Oh, sorry. I was going to switch to Milena. There she is, in her elf form, which is a little different because she was more ram horns than... The elves have different types of horns and stuff like that, so she stands apart by her horn. So who lives in Lorwyn? We're going to start with these guys here, but we can talk about a large number of creatures. In Lorwyn, there are technically 8 sapient species that dominate the plane. Elves, Kithkain, Marrows, Flamekin, Boggarts, Treefolk, Giants, Fairies. They do exist in Shadowmoor, but in different forms. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this is actually one of the very few planes in the multiverse that aren't humans. Humans aren't here. They don't naturally occur. There's also a lot of other strange animals and supernatural rights. Wisenets, Springjacks, Servants. There's a sapient race of mimics known as Changelings, Greater Elementals, and they all sleep in this temperate environment, this unending season. These 9 species, including Changelings, are known as the Tribes, and they have a kind of state of peace between them. There are skirmishes, small battles from time to time, but they do not know full-scale war between any of these. They are provincial and distrustful of outsiders, to those that are their own kind. Distrustful that aren't outsiders that aren't part of their own kind. And, of course, they're all wary of the elves. Cruel, powerful, and if anybody is the ruler of this plane, they're the de facto ruler of it. We'll get to the Boggarts who are here in a second. I'm doing a lot of intro here. Now, Lorwyn is a backwater plane when it comes to planeswalkers. It always has been. So, most know of it as an idyllic paradise because it's kind of been more discovered the 300 years leading up to the events. And in later history, though, the barriers with the tribes have begun to break down as individuals of different races came together to build new tribes based on common goals. Soldiers, wizards, so on, kind of things like that. Now, before we get into talking about each of those tribes, we should mention Shadowmoor. And then we'll go into each of these groups, and we'll go into some places in both of the planes, because they might exist in one form or the other in the new merged planes. Shadowmoor. Lorwyn is greenness, forests. Shadowmoor is a dark reflection. There isn't a lot of green. It's in perpetual dusk. The sun is never directly visible, and the only light seems to come from unseen sources. The sun is always hidden behind a blanket of clouds. It still observes dawn, dusk, and night, albeit with no moon. The people of Lorwyn, when they become people of Shadowmoor, do not recall their previous lives. And they have memories as if they always lived in Shadowmoor. There are some beings that do retain their memories. Ashling, Bright Bale, Maelrin, Ona, the Vidillion Clique, Roshan, Neander, the Sapling. Those are just a short list of individuals from the main storyline that happen in Lorwyn that actually retain their memories between the switch between them. Another difference is that some creatures that are dormant in Lorwyn are active in Shadowmoor. Oafs, Corrigans, Pukas, Kelpies, Scarecrows, the Nightmarish, all are active in Shadowmoor and wouldn't be in Lorwyn. So I wouldn't be surprised if these things don't exist in the new Lorwyn that's merged, because it has day and night. These were mythical beings that slumbered beneath Lorwyn, hiding from the dead, and re-emerged in the night. Those species that existed have changed, altered by Shadowmoor. Each has a demeanor has taken turn for the worse. The Kithkain, withdrawn, distrustful of other inhabitants. The boggards, violent brutes. The Flamekins, now called Cinder, have no passion, hateful shadows of themselves. Giants lose their intelligence, rely on basic instincts. Marrow are spiteful pirates and raiders who lurk in the rivers. Treefolk are warped skeletons of bark and branches. And changelings have become malicious mimics. The Elves have a positive, though, in this time period, though. They're the last remnant of Lorwyn's old idyllic environment. Pressed by hostile conditions, they're forced to battle their very existence. And rather than lording over the plain here, and pressing the other species to conform to their values of beauty and grace, it shifts that from their arrogance to humble self-preservation. And only the Fae remain mostly the same, regardless of either version of it, because they're protected by Ona's magic, and remain mischievous and unpredictable. Let's talk these individuals, and of course we have right here boggarts. Our good friends, and these are boggarts in general. Now, boggarts, if we want to talk about them a little bit, are a type of goblin. They're a type of subclan of goblin. But depending on the plane they are, depends on their form, too. Boggarts appear in multiple planes. Of course, in Lowryn and Shadowmoor, there is one main group of them, but there are some kind of that could appear in other places. And there are other versions of them that appear even in these planes here, especially in Shadowmoor. The hobgoblins, redcaps, spriggans, and streamhoppers are all beings here that are goblin related. But in general, the boggarts of Lorwyn live in sunlit bogs and craggy hills of the Tyrant Plain. They're mischievous, not really evildoers, selfish creatures driven by hedonism and self-satisfaction, and devoting themselves to utter anarchy. They have one rule, as an entire group: no object or sensation shall be hoarded by an individual boggart upon pain of exile. And they experience things through touch. And of course, they're rampant kleptomaniacs. They are highly fertile and believe in reincarnation. Now in Shadowmoor, well, they're animalistic marauders. They're not malicious, but dangerous. They live to eat and consume anything they come across, organic or not. They're a little more than beasts. Language is rudimentary. They come together in loose packs called gangs. They wear piecemeal armor scavenged from other races, sometimes nailed to their bodies. And I can show you a picture of the Shadowmoor version. They're very good. Alright. Now we can talk about the changelings of Lorwyn. That's an interesting thing to have on. Now we can talk about the mimics and the pukas a little bit, as they're more Shadowmoor related. But the changelings themselves are relatively harmless, semi-intelligent humanoids who change their shape into the creatures around them. Their standard appearance is that of a squat, greenish blue humanoid with scaly skin and large eyes. I got a picture here. Translucent body and frequently forked tongue. They don't really have a culture, no technology, no art. They are creatures of magic. They don't really have an intellectual wherewithal to forge an agenda as a group. Hence why they're not they're there, but not really there as part of the 9 tribes. There are really 8 tribes that are really there. They're skilled at mimicry and take on shapes. They're all over Lorwyn. No proper homeland. But they are associated with the Velis Vays, with the convener. Of course, they become the mimics, aggressive, vicious creatures that attack in packs while taking forms that resemble warped reflections of the victims, and then the puka, which are horse-headed shapeshifters whose moods swing wildly from mischief to malice. So you get some changes there, too. Now we want to talk the Flamekin, the elementals of Lorwyn. And of course, their other version there, the Cinders. We can talk about the greater elementals to a degree, but we want to talk about tribes. So, on Lorwyn, abstract entities such as hope, fears, dreams, and nightmares are real there just as much as grasses and trees. And of course, Flamekin that exist there. They're similar size and shape to humans. They live in the mountains of Lorwyn and are basically beings of passion, warriors and shamans who focus the inner flames on weapons of battle. They're the sworn enemies of the elves, who use their Treefolk servants to suppress the Flamekin and combine them with their mountain homes. Of course, they look like humans made of smooth, living black stone with four-fingered hands, horned faces, and graceful features. Their inner fire blazes through their crowns and joints and shoulders, and fire comprising the Flamekin body normally burns merely warm to the touch, allowing them to wear textiles and safely interact with non-flame. However, they can burn very hot when infused with mana or strong emotion. A group of them is called a Bright Earth and serves as emissaries of Flamekin's goodwill to other species, performing useful tasks that require fire, such as smithing. They are semi-nomadic, born out of a desire to explore new lands and experience life in the fields. On the other hand, you have the Cinders. They've lost their ability to hold a constant flame, making them walking skeletal, smoky remains. According to legend, their flames were taken long ago by a traitor known as the Extinguisher, and due to this they've become very bitter. Most sinners want the entire world to suffer just as they do, and thus attempt to sow chaos and destruction until nothing good remains. Due to the loss of their fire, they're extremely jealous of species who use it. When fire spotted by Cinder, will attack Frosty and attempt to claim the fire for its own. Yeah, not great. Of course, we have the Elves. This is a very tiny picture. It shows them off there, for glory. The Elves of Lorwyn. So they are dominant. They're brutish, race supremacists who hide their savagery behind a facade of beauty for sophistication. Oh my god, I almost did it again with facade. It's a previous episode stuff. They are obsessed with physical attractiveness, that they write laws concerning about it, and believe those that do not meet their standard perfections, including other races than themselves, deserve nothing but extermination. They divide themselves into tribes and castes, the most powerful which is the Guild Wolf. They're tall and thin, have ram-like horns, males' horns are longer than females', and cloven deer-like hooves on their feet. Unlike other elves, those in Lorwyn have a short lifespan, about 30 to 40 years. There are 4 official castes, measuring beauty and cunning. The Faultless, and you possess a minimum threshold of beauty and grace, gain that rank. The Immaculate, dignitaries, VIPs, and high-level functionaries. The Exquisite, Packmasters, lords of elvish hunting packs, and important courtiers are of exquisite rank. They have pictures speak directly to perfects, and perfects, they're so beautiful and so shrewd that they rule all the others. Not only a few known in the world, the perfects can kill those of a low rank with impunity. And the rank is perfect, not prefect. So it is perfect. They're known for cultivating Moonglove, which can be deterred into a potent poison. It's deadly even in small amounts, taking down towering giants. In concise, controlled, and diluted amounts, its necrotizing properties can be used to etch or carve living tissue, such as skin and bark. Like many other planes, the Elves of Lorwyn view nature as something to be improved, cultivated, and necessarily rearranged. They often hunt in eyebloods. Well, they often hunt eyebloods. Creatures who fail their standards of beauty and therefore are the lowest status in their eyes, but sometimes instead they create vine-bred minions and such from such creatures. For this, they can animate parasitic plants called nettle vines to bind around their victims, creating twisted, powerful, and eminently controllable minions. We go to Shadowmoor, where they try to preserve what little they consider beautiful in nature. Their horns change. They remain physically the same except their horns, which are now covered in thorns. They live similar lives to their Lorwyn counterparts. They're considered adults at 14. They live physically in magically fortified homesteads called safeholds. They're located in trees. The oldest and largest safeholds are built into trees that stand on small hillocks called sheenolds, which are an ancient gravesite where the souls of elf warriors and druids lie slumbering. The soil around a sheenold is sterile, providing a clean meadow which makes sneaking up on a safehold difficult. If the safehold is destroyed, the sheenot beneath it remains, creating a twisted reflection of the defeat suffered by the elves. Rarely, the ghosts of elvish dead haunt these places. And of course, they seek out beauty in the world, including creatures, objects, places. When they find a beautiful location, they establish a safe hold there and attempt to protect it from harm. They also steal and capture creatures and objects and bring them to safe hold to preserve. They're known as safe rights and are dedicated to this endeavor. So very different. So it's going to be interesting to see how these versions of each merge together in the new plane. As I go through the remaining ones here, just as a thought, how has the merger of the two planes altered each of these groups? Now we have Onona again, because we have to talk about the Fae of Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. Fairies are the main part of the Fae race. The Fae lead short, flitting lives of pursuit, gossip, diversion, and musing intrigues. Petty and vain, they're petulant children at play. They love to have fun, revel in Lorwyn's eternal midsummer, and following their whims. They'd also be cruel, capricious, and vindictive. They travel in groups of 3 to 6 called cliques. Of course, Onona, at the beginning of this entire time period, is their queen. A Fae-ish creature herself, like a flower being composed of thousands of petals, constantly budding tiny insect-like fairy children. Fairies of Lorwyn do not dream, which is why they spend so much time harvesting the dreams of others. If they can distill these stolen dreams of sparkling energy they can carry around with them, then bring this dream stuff back to their queen to both nourish and pollinate her. Their magic centers around illusions called glamour. They use glamour to beautify themselves, entertain others, or incapacitate foes. And they are the ones that are largely unaffected by the Great Aurora. But Onona's consolidation of power did lead some fairies to embrace more hierarchy and maintenance of the status quo, causing them to branch into white. They became a little bit more lawful because of needing Odin to maintain it. And there are some wingless Lowryn fairies called Brownlings. Now we can speak of the giants of Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. They're short-tempered, territorial, passionate, maybe zealous and stubborn. They do deal with red and white mana. Reclusive and lonely, largely due to their need for vast amounts of food, water, and land. They come to blows when sharing territory, often to the death and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake, levering entire villages during a brawl. They're known to take rich and long sleeps. They also enter a trance-like hibernation called the Name Sleep, in which they have epic dreams. The giants' first name sleep usually occurs at the end of their adolescence, but they can also be triggered by life-changing events or trauma, or the onset of old age. Young giants derive their surnames from these sleeps, and they may give the dreamer a new purpose in life. Its first name is generally 2 or 3 syllables and serve as a familiar form of address for friends. All others refer to the giant only by their surnames, and 2 giants that share the surname invariably fight for it. They're hermits, arbiters, explorers, and oracles. Some have visions of the futures. Their long lifespans give them particular perception of time and wisdom of many respects. They huddle in mountain caves, often above the cloud line. You can spot a giant's lair by the enormous, rugged dolmen stones built up around the entrance. Others range over Lorwyn with long, looping steps. You can tell a travel route by the man-sized, earth-compressed footsteps and lack of vegetation. A dead giant can be a major event in the region because their lairs are often storehouses of interesting and rare things. Great caravans of treasure seekers and merchants, particularly elves who seek hidden beauty, seek to explore and loot their treasures. Of course, in Shadowmoor, the giants are more brutish, associated with red and green mana. During those periods of sleep, plants and moss grow over them, and they never bother to remove them. They're viewed by others as a problem because they seldom stop in their path, even if village is on their way. So now we have to talk about the Kithkain, who the only other plane we know the Kithkain appear in, other than Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, is, of course, Dominaria. Kithkain and Dominaria. Anyway, but those of Lorwyn are a quick, agile race of small humanoids associated with white mana. They center around interrelated villages and towns called Schlackens. The head of a Schlacken is called a Sen, or mayor. Kinsbale, Burriton, Goldmetal, Cloverdale, and Dundaloin are some of the known ones. Their society is based on a type of collective consciousness known as the Thought Lift. It connects Kithkain in a kind of empathic web, allowing to share emotions and thoughts, making very effective in battle cooperation. It naturally binds them together in tightly knit communities. The better you understand the thoughts and feelings of your fellows, the closer you feel to them. They generally welcome travelers of other races to their Clockchens, but it's said that if you pick a fight with one, you fight all of them. Physically, they are shorter than their Dominari counterparts, with stout bodies and thick limbs. Their faces are round, almost pumpkin-like, with high expressive features. Lots of convex and round shapes in armor and weapon designs reinforce their visual sensibilities. They're peaceful farmers, but fierce warriors when provoked. They can be builders and alchemists, both craftsmen and using craftsmanship and magic to construct melee weapons of leather, bronze, bows, slings, traps, farming equipment, tools, you name it. Even some balloon-driven vehicles. They are reverent and quite superstitious, too. They venerate the mysterious greater elementals of Lorwyn, beings that embody the abstract concepts in dreams and sometimes nightmares of the plane. They feel that the movement and actions of greater elementals represent omens for their lives and watch them with respectful distance. Everything that is of cultural importance, like stories and customs we found in the Book of Kith and Kin. Kithkain knights and soldiers ride in battle on springjacks, which they also raise for wool and meat. Now, in Shadowmoor, the Kithkain's furtive, creative, and oversized white eyes with gold become the Kithkain become furtive creatures with oversized white eyes or gold with no pupils. The Mind Weft, the name that the Thought Life receives in Shadowmoor, that once bound them together in comforting harmony, now links them all in a state of constant paranoia. They have substitute conformity and fear anyone not like themselves. The rustic Clachans become armed fortresses called Duons, and the Kithkain huddle together like rats in their corner, barely keeping the horrors of Shadowmoor at bay. Some Duons seem to be more paranoid than others, fearing to leave their own households alone, while others have lone scouts to watch the area. Like other cultures, they can have a designated hero to empower with the Mind Weft. They also were creators of the huge inanimate scarecrows, though they became animated for unknown reasons, and they lost control of these malignant constructs. Whoops! The Marrow. The fish-tailed merfolk of this plane are known as Marrows. They're razor-witted. They control commerce and trade routes in Lorwyn, which take place across the extensive rivers. They're couriers, intermediaries, merchants. They're natives to the river, but able to breathe both water and air. Their fish-like anatomy of their lower half. They can't move effectively on land without strong magic. However, they control and maintain so-called marrow loops, a system of rivers that crisscross Lorwyn and connect the furthest known points. These lands extend overland via rivers and streams, underground via subterranean tunnels, and even into town centers of other races via wells. The deepest part of the subterranean river of Lynx is called the Dark Meanders. Most Marrows steer clear of the meanders due to the lack of light and ease in which one can get lost. They're organized in schools. Each school is read by Regeri. Known ones are Silvergill, Stonybrook, Paperfin, Weirwinder, and Ink Fathom schools. These are, of course, just in the Landwalker language, and closest imitations to their true names. For example, Paperfin is Papur Fielin in Marrow, so keep that in mind. And of course, the Ink Fathom schools interested in and checking out the Dark Meanders. Then, of course, we go to Shadowmoor. Marrow become more fish-like. Their wide, toothy mouths hinder their ability to speak, forcing them to communicate through hisses, a bubbling froth through the gills and nostrils, and their gutter versions of land speak. Amongst them, they communicate simple facts and moods through secretion from their scent glands. Their skin is made up of tiny diamond-shaped scales topped with even smaller barbs, which they catch and rip delicate fish. The crisscross pattern of scales often gives them an oily sheen. Long, needle-like sharp structural spines support their fanned swimming and rudder fins. The spines can in some cases deliver poison for hunting defense. Shadowmoor marrow have developed muscular in their tails that allows them to sit upright on land, along with specialized walking fins that can use to dig into the earth and drag their bulk along the ground. It's clumsy, inefficient, but allows the raiders and hunters to collect good and prey before returning to the dark waters of the lanes. Overcome by covetousness, Shadowmoor marrows become murderous cutthroats and thieves who steal from other races along the rivers, particularly Kithkain. As enormous symbols of power, giants invoke the most entity in marrows, and some spend weeks concocting plans to bring one down. They believe that the blood and tissue of giants bring them strength, and some marrow carve jewelry, weapons, or even layers from giant bones. They've abandoned shaping the tides, leading some rivers to dry up, others to flood, and in some cases, inhabiting entire flooded clashans. There's also another group that is technically Merfolk themselves. They're unusual Merfolk than any of their kind. Their lower bodies resemble seals, kind of almost like centaurs. And finally, there is one final group that we can talk about here. That's the major tribes. And that is, of course, the Treefolk. The oldest beings native to Lorwyn, existing before the first Elves, Kithkain, or Giants, and as well as the longest lived. They're born from seeds and grow into mundane trees, through a process known as the rising, some of these trees awaken into Treefolk. In their youth, they stay in birth groves, absorbing the wisdom and oral history of their elders. When they mature, they wander the world alone, seeking those worthy of their knowledge and shelter. While male and female Treefolk both exist, there is little or no difference between the sexes in appearance or personality, and both are presumed capable of producing both seeds and pollen necessary for reproduction, so they can give birth to thousands of seedlings, sentient or mundane, over their lifetime. They don't have the same concept of immediate family as other humanoid races. Instead, the nurturing instinct is directed over entire groves. This instinct sometimes leads Treefolk to adopt communities of Kithkain, much the same way of acting as a guardian. The Kithkain collection of Cloverdale has at least one such protector. They are the wisest of those living in Lorwyn, and living repository of the history. Others often seek them out for advice, though not always are friendly enough to give it up. The wisdom is given in the form of aphorisms that short-lived races often have trouble understanding. At some point in the past, the Treefolk waged war with the Kithkain and ruled significant portions of the plain as dictators. Unlike Dominar's Treefolk, the Treefolk of Lorwyn come from a variety of species, including their unique habitats and personalities. They're almost exclusively born from deciduous trees like oaks, rowan, ash, and poplar. Conifer trees like pines and spruce are rare on Lorwyn, and do not seem to produce Treefolk, but at least one yew Treefolk is known to exist. Now, we do have to talk about the ash Treefolk a little bit too. Yeah, we do, because it's the opposite side. Oh, I didn't switch to Treefolk image. My bad, I didn't switch to Treefolk image. Oh, I didn't actually just do the, Of course, again, we just know how they, switch. Oh, actually, this is Conifer, the last yew, who only produced the sapling, which was destroyed by Onona, presumably making them extinct. And the sapling was part of the group that fought against Onona. So, unfortunately, the yew folk are thought to be extinct. But the others, the ash, black poplar, elders, oak, rowan, still exist. Anyway, and of course, they become warped skeletons of bark and branches in Shadowmoor. No other major changes to them that I can really say. Now, there's some other things you could find. I mentioned some of them in, wildlife and stuff like that, and the other threats in Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. But that's basically it. That's basically who is there. Now we can talk about some locations that exist in both these places. Major places for Lorwyn, which some do exist in the other one, of course, is Guiltleaf, which is part of the Guiltleaf tribe of Lorwyn. Its capital, the Guiltleaf realm, lists Alana within its realm. Legend says the Guiltleaf wood was created by Eadrin, a shaman of the perfect caste, known for his skills in shaping living trees. He ordered hundreds of trees uprooted and rearranged into powder he deemed beautiful. It is a considerable, beautiful place, so it's a main location in Lorwyn. Glen Alondra, which I'm showing here, is of course the haven of Onona. It's a wellspring of blue and black mana, and it has a protective layer upon it of deceptive Gammer guarded by the Fae. It's known throughout the plane by everyone, but the rumors of existence as a prank perpetrated by the Fairies do exist too. It's mainly because of Ona's protective magic. It's basically the only place that doesn't change from shadow markers. The Great Forest in Lorwyn's endless expanse of stout truck oaks and mighty other trees is the Grove of the Rising, the birthplace of Treefolk. Some of Lorwyn's most famous Treefolk warriors and shamans who adorn the siege originated from here, and Mermanbrook and Wren's Run are part of here. It becomes the Creekwood in Shadowmoor. There's the Honeystone River, drunk dry by Treefolk monk. The Kithkain Clachans, Ballyrush, Burrington, Cloverdale, Dundoolan, Gold Meadow, Kinsbell, the Marrow Lanes, Wandermire and Dark Meander, the mountain ranges, and we have the amphitheater of Glanda Feudal, Mount Tufnell, which is a sacred mountain and birthplace of Flamekin in Lorwyn. So that's an important place in Lorwyn. And again, I'm mentioning all these because we don't know what is both in Lorwyn and the... We know what was in Lorwyn and was in Shadowmoor. We don't know what is in the new combined place yet. Horinger Valley, which is a lowland region in Lorwyn, for which the Wanderwine flows. It's home to a large number of ash tree folk. The stand of Tunnelmire, an outpost of Treefolk and other trees attempting to establish a new forest on the rocky outcome of the Flamekin lands. Vale's Vale, of course, which I mentioned, which is a very important cavern for changelings. And only Marrow and a few others in other tribes know about this place. Hollowtooth Hollow, a cave of an imprisoned Bargeist. Mosswort Bridge, which a troll was imprisoned. Shelldock Isle, ancient shells used by Lorwyn's descendants as picnic spots before they woke into a kraken during the Aurora. Splintercock Knoll, an overgrown mountain that housed a dragon. The Forge Tenders of Burrington traditionally use pebbles from the knoll, whose magic gives a fuel of constant heat. And the Windbreast Heights, a raptor whose wings were frozen for generations into a shapely and blustery cliff. Now, on Shadowmoor, we can talk about a few locations there, too. Yay! Of course, I talked about Ashmore. The Dark Meanders is big there. The Duans or Ballymuck, Barrington, Kinskiar, south of Mistmeadow, and of course Mistmeadow. Glen Elendrin remains, Mount Coolrath, Venus Vale, Winterbrine, Wanderbrine, all these things. Mount Coolrath, of course, is the counterpart on Shadowmoor to Mount Toffanel, as the birthplace of the Cinders. The Vale's Vale remains the same. So, yeah. I mentioned the Creekwood, Farhaven. Of course, coming down from the Sacred Mountains is the... whichever one you're talking about. The Wanderwine River springs from the source. The Wiltleaf Wood is the counterpart to the Guiltleaf by the Great Aurora. Wren's Run becomes Raven's Run, which I'm showing off here in the image, which is a maze-like structure in the forest. And of course, Cara Olis as the center of the Wiltleaf and the Elves of the Plane of Shadowmoor. The transformation of Lisa Lana into Kaer Ulius. Again, interesting where we got the fusion, and we can talk about the fusion a little bit there. Hey, this is the I didn't. The invasion card's on its side, so I showed the flip side of the invasion card here. So yeah, we know at the end of Evening Tide, the Great Aurora is no more. The plane structure and races and what's been going on, the people there, the species, we don't know yet. We know that Maralen is one of the main participants in the return of the day-night cycle to the plane. We do know that Lorwyn in particular is the dominant of the two planes. Day dominates over night, but it's a fused plane now of the two realms, and what form does that take? What memories do people have? What versions of everything do we have now? Well, other than a lot of stuff, we do have a little bit of information from this here. This card here. We know the Phyrexian invasion targeted Lorwyn. And we know that, of course, from that, the Lorwyn aspect is the dominant one, though elements of Shadowmoor survived into the presence. That's what we know. Lorwyn is dominant, but Shadowmoor still remains as part of it. As such, both worlds' versions of Kithkain exist. The Phyrexian appearance was apparently so unsightly to the eyes of the plane's inhabitants that both Perfects and Eyeblade worked together in unprecedented kinship to repel the invaders. Basically, everybody hated them. That leaves us to the future. And here is some actual concept art of an island in Shadowmoor. So where does this take us to? Well, the new Lorwyn set, which we don't know a lot about. We know it Return to Lorwyn is the working title for it. It's going to be coming out not this year, but the end of next year. So I got like a year and a half before I have to worry about the update video to this anyway, that I mentioned possibly at the beginning of this. It's a year and a half away. We're quite a ways away from here. I'm getting this out early for your full lore breakdown on Lorwyn. I also like Lorwyn. It's a pretty cool plane. Pretty cool ideas. The idea of the new merged plane and knowing kind of what's happening there or kind of dividing it, certainly speaking, someone could just be in Lorwyn or Shadowmoor and play those out in a TTRPG adventure. Use that lore for something. Certainly speaking, there's a lot of really cool cards in those sets too, if you want to talk about it from the Magic the Gathering side. But, yeah. We know that this is the second in the third and final story arc of the set is the second in the third and final story of the Metronome storyline. I don't know. They've got a weird storyline going on, and it's going to be related to that. We know that. We know there's going to be stuff. We know we're going to revisit all the basically the groups that are there. They changed the name from Tribal to something else. I can't remember what it is. They just announced that change in the mechanics just as of dating this video. No, dating a video. Dear me, how dare I slightly date a video? Date I uploaded this. That dates it. Regardless, though, yes, we will be having the formats. Very similar, probably. I assume we're going to have what will be the 9 tribes in there, but as it's kind of known now, kindred. So it will be kindred mechanics. It's the tribal cards will probably return now with the new term kindred that's replacing it in the errata. It's a better term, I think. There's some, connotations with the ideas of tribal, oftentimes. So kindred sounds like a better term. I'm okay with it. Certainly speaking, personally. Just saying that because it relates to these sets here. Lorwyn was a tribal set. It represented introducing new mana colors to certain groups and seeing these groups return in various ways. Seeing the basically sometimes duo trifecta of colors related to the various kindred we will be visiting will be interesting. And certainly speaking, we don't know a lot other than we're coming back here. And it's a ways away. So, I can't say much else for the future other than look forward to this, and I will do some more videos in the future. I'll probably revisit Lowryn in the future, and that's kind of where we'll leave it today. I will revisit Lorwyn sometime after the set comes out. I gotta be honest, I'll wait a little bit after the set comes out for, the full lore to be kind of put together and, people to talk about it. We get an idea of all the storylines that come out when the Magic stories have finished and all that kind of stuff. And then we get a picture of what's going on. And then I will also be able to involve the ongoing storylines, which I'm a mixture of basically both all for and not for. I gotta say that kind of way. I'm in that middle area of maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't, we'll see for these. So, kind of where I'm at. But nonetheless, I do really love these two clans. A lot of cool cards were introduced with them. I still have some new cards in some of my old Legacy and Vintage decks, which use cards from these sets, even with a lot of the newer ones that have come out. They just still work. The reflection spells have always been really cool, and a bunch of other ones have just been interesting. I recommend checking them out. I had that long video on the entire history of the set. It is a number of years old now, but it still probably holds up pretty well. It's back from my heavy editing days. Those suck. But, I didn't mind doing them back in the day. I might revisit some of those. I've talked about that in the future, revisiting the history if I figure out a better way to do it. Maybe I will. A better way for editing. Something like I do here, where I just switch the images as part of the video. Might be cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed learning about lore, and maybe you're inspired to pick up old cards from it. Could be for a modern deck, could be for a Legacy Vintage deck, just could be for some Commander. Maybe I'm inspiring you to use these places in a TTRPG, using something like D&D 5e, an easy system, and you've used Magic Worlds with D&D before, that system, or any other system that you think would be appropriately fantasy system. Certainly it's a one with this kind of juxtaposition between the day and night, and we've got 3 interesting time periods you could explore. A time period of Lorwyn, a time period of Shadowmoor, and of course, what's fused after. We know a little bit, we don't know a lot. Phyrexian Invasion only gave us a small glimpse of what is to come. Certainly speaking, we will see this. Anyway, if you want to see more tabletop-related stuff, that's every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. In the early afternoon, I stream those live over on Twitch, and then it goes up on YouTube. So YouTube, remember, like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, all the algorithm stuff. So I didn't say that at the beginning, I forgot to ask the question, what do people think of lore? That's my question for today. So if you've gone this far, and you see that, please just let me know. What do you think of this place? What it inspires you to do? Go play Magic related to these cards, or maybe use something like this in tabletop. I'm interested, like an RPG world. Because I the lore aspect, I'm okay with going both directions. Anyway, if I miss any of those days, it's early to mid-afternoon. I do Blackout Day on Saturdays. That's the stream times. I have a live stream of a TTRPG, Crimson Queen, every Wednesdays at 9 p.m. My current one has the time of this video, so if you're not checking this out much later, please just go back and watch it. It's very fun. I might be even done them by the time you're going to be watching this next year, before the lore stuff comes out. I'm getting ahead of the pack. Discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6. We talk about news of the week, deeper discussion topics, and all kinds in tabletop world, from board games to TTRPGs to collectible card games. All these kind of things about helping with your table does tend to fit more into the TTRPG space, but generally speaking, if there's an interesting topic about anything, we talk about it. And dive deep into it. And also go over that news video. I have social media linked below. Let's go to Twitter. Twitter.com. Well, Discord and the website formerly known as Twitter. Social media. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed all this. I hope you're going to join me for more explorations on the Magic Plains, because there's some really cool ones out there. And until next time we talk, we'll go over some tabletop stuff. Whether for Magic, or D&D, or Pathfinder, or World of Darkness, anything else. I bet all of you out there are deep and wonderful. Farewell.